Madam Speaker, let's begin with the gun debate. The House has already passed a bill. You've been very critical of Senator McConnell. Do you have any sense of what Senate Republicans would support when it comes to gun legislation?
You really would have to ask them, but I know what the American people support. 90% of the American people support common sense background check legislation, and that is what we passed just almost 200 days ago. In the earliest days of the Democratic majority, in February, we passed the legislation. It's been sitting over there for just about 200 days. 100 people a day die from gun violence, 40% of them children or teenagers. Every single day for 200 days, many of those deaths could have been prevented with background checks.
From your standpoint, are background checks a starting point or an end point when it comes to gun legislation?
Background checks are the critical point because they save the most lives. People talk about other initiatives which are important, but what saves the most lives are the background checks. And what this legislation does is just expands on the background check laws that are there now. When the law was passed, and I was here and lobbied, whipped for it on the floor as a new member of, relatively new member of Congress, we didn't have online sales. So now this is about online sales, gun shows, and person-to-person sales. Those are ways that people circumvent the background check laws that are there. So it's only an expansion, and an expansion of how much time is given for the background check. It's very simple, and 90% of the American people, Democrats, Republicans, gun owners, NRA members, independents, support this legislation. Just Senator McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate, so far.
As you know, the debate, though, seems to center on the Second Amendment versus civil rights. So how do you balance the two?
Well, this is not in any violation of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment talks about a role of Congress in terms of the right to bear arms. This has nothing to do with this. This just says, as a protection, that you shouldn't have a gun unless you can pass a background check. There's no objection to that, and there's no, most everybody I know supports the Second Amendment. So this isn't in violation of that.
And you've said if this does not pass, that lawmakers will, in your words, have hell to pay.
Well, I was quoting the groups. I myself had said we're going to make the issue too hot to handle in the public opinion. President Lincoln said, "With public sentiment is everything. With it you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing." And so in keeping with the fact that 90% of the American people support this, why would not Congress act upon the wishes of the people? So I've always said we'll make it too hot to handle, meaning that we'll make sure the public knows what is at stake and what the possibilities are. But when I said that outside, the group said, no, they'll have hell to pay. So they turned up the heat on me. So I was quoting them.
Have you talked to Senator McConnell about this?
No, not for a long time. Maybe days gone by, but not lately.
I'm curious, what's your relationship like with him?
Both of us have been appropriators, so we've worked together over time. In the 90s, I was the top Democrat on the Foreign Operations Committee. It was called that then. Did all the foreign assistance and that. And so we interacted in those capacities. So I've known and worked with him over the years. But right now, it's not about Senator McConnell. Senator McConnell has been very clear. He's not doing anything the president doesn't want. And so that's where we are. So I don't know why a leader in the Senate would abdicate his responsibilities, weaken the institution in which he leads, because the president doesn't want it. So it's really unfortunate because, again, getting back to your point of what is the importance of this legislation, it saves the most lives. Some issues are higher profile and the rest, but this saves the most lives.